This is chapter 2 of Siblings of an Only Child. Just for review's sake, in chapter 1, we were in Penfield, Illinois. This is where Cleet was born. Cleet is the star of the show. While they were living in Penfield, they were living in a farmhouse with a couple, Mr. and Mrs. Grigsby. And the characters are Cleet, which is the main character. He is the son. Then, of course, there's mom and dad. And Cleet has an older sister whose name is Margie. Okay, so let's start chapter 2, Mitchell Court Years. After Cleet was born, the living arrangements at the Grigsbys continued to work out fine for several months. When Cleet was an infant, Mom and Dad had this crib in their room, and they had Margie sleep in the other room upstairs. They told her she was 3 and big enough for her own room. However, they stocked the room mostly with new stuff for the baby, so it was really not her room so much as it was Cleet's. Of course, this did not bother Margie much because she didn't know any better. She was too young to be aware of the building tsunami of affection that would ultimately be heaped upon Cleet, often at her expense. The den, so to speak, became less of a den and more of a storage area for the many items Mom and Dad accumulated for Cleet, and it filled up quickly. They could still go in and there and listen to the radio, but only if they didn't mind having a teddy bear, or a toy gun, a race car, a Lincoln log, or Dad's favorite, a slinky, sharing a seat with them. On the other hand, you didn't even need the fingers on one hand to count the number of toys Margie had. But like I said, Margie was too little to be aware of her slowly decreasing lack of standing, and things seemed to be moving along famously as the four of them continued to live with the Grigsbys. To everyone's surprise, one day old man Grigsby just up and died. He was sitting in his favorite chair in the den, listening to some big band music, and poof, he just checked out. Nobody, including him, knew he was sick, but I guess he was. Well, that put a damper on the foursome and their living arrangements. Mrs. Grigsby said she couldn't stand staying there without him, so she vacated the place in favor of a room with her sister in Chicago. Her two kids took over running the place, and their first order of business was to kick Mom, Dad, Margie, and little Cleet out of the house. They were given 2 weeks to move. Seems that the Grigsby's boys were never too fond of Dad, probably because their dad liked him more than he did them. I think Dad's pride had kept him from securing base housing. He didn't want to be one of the sheep who lived totally off the military. Besides, he was a country boy and always felt more comfortable on a farm than within city limits, no matter how small the city was. But in this case, he bit the bullet and got assigned an apartment in Mitchell Court. Now, even though Mitchell Court was not on the base, it was base housing, which meant that all the folks living there were in the military and that all the crazy regulations in place on the military base were also relevant. Of course, as it turned out, almost nobody paid any attention to the regulations, how high bookshelves could be, the number of people sleeping in a room, cleaning specs, and so on. Anyway, the four of them moved into what we always called, and still do, 117. Never gave a street name. I don't even know what street it was on, just that it was 117, a two-bedroom apartment on the first floor of what would easily pass as a tenement by today's standards. One weird quirk of the place, though, was that even though it was small square footage wise, it had a basement, which doubled the size of the place. So instead of living in 600 square feet, they had access to 1,200 square feet. That was really a good thing because with only two bedrooms, they needed a place to keep all the stuff they constantly accumulated for Cleet. One event prior to Mom and Dad using the basement as Cleet's storehouse was what we lovingly refer to as the Titty Boot incident. When they first moved to 117, Cleet was a toddler, just learning to talk, and he was also just being potty trained. Dad had this habit of saying, quick, quick, whenever he wanted you to do something ASAP. If you were late going someplace, he would say something like, quick, quick, get in the car. Now, if we combine Dad's quick, quick expression with Cleet learning to use a toilet, we get the titty boot incident. You see, when Dad would notice that Cleet is about to go to the bathroom, he would say, quick, quick, let's go to the potty. Well, either Cleet was too young to understand or maybe just too stupid, but he misunderstood what quick, quick meant. So one day he and Dad are in the basement, and there happens to be an array of shoes and boots on the floor where people had come in from the cold and deposited their heavy foot coverings. Cleet had to pee. So he pulls out his little member and in his words, quick, quick, Titty's boot. Titty was his pre-linguistic competence name for his sister Margie. He was trying to follow the southern custom of calling one's sister Sissy, only he couldn't pronounce S. So everything with an S came out as a T. Thus, he tried to call Margie Sissy, but it came out Titty. He thought quick quick was the word for peeing. So he was going to pee in his sister's boot. Dad thought that was cute, so he let him do it. But he never told Margie that her brother had cleaned her boot for her. We are unaware of how many other similar incidents might have taken place because my mom and dad's family stories about Cleet always fall into the cute rather than the stupid or mean category. Anyway, when they settled into 117, Mom and Dad took one of the bedrooms and Margie and Cleet shared the other one. Only Margie usually ended up sleeping in the living room on an old couch Dad had found sitting in front of a farmhouse on Highway 136. She had to sleep on it because as Cleet got older, he got more demanding. He wanted his own room, and Dad thought that was a good idea. Besides, Margie tended to complain about Cleet kicking her while she slept, which kept Cleet from getting his proper rest. Mom's take was that it was improper for a boy and a girl to sleep in the same bed. So they didn't give the room to Cleet so much as they just told Margie to stay out of it and be considerate of her little brother because, after all, he was just a little guy. Sometimes Cleet allowed Margie to keep her clothes in the bedroom closet, but at times he thought it best to scatter them all over the living room. Mom would pick them up and keep them on the kitchen table. Sometimes they would wash out the food Cleet threw at them at dinner time, and other times they just told Margie to be a big girl. They lived in 117 for more than 4 years until I was born. While I was still in the hospital, they moved from 117 to 121 because it was bigger. It had 3 bedrooms. So Mom and Dad had one bedroom. Margie and I shared one, and Cleet had the largest one. He needed it because now he was 6 years old and he started playing organized sports and needed more room for his equipment. Now, 121 didn't have a basement, but at least Cleet kept most of his stuff in his room. With all his sports equipment, he didn't have much room for his clothes, so he kept most of his clothes in the closet in mine and Margie's room. Margie was 9 now and was getting interested in girly things, but she didn't have any place to put her stuff. So she didn't have perfumes and lotions and curlers and just generally the types of things other girls had. And kids at school made fun of her being such a plain Jane. Dad told her not to worry though, because Cleet would make up for it when he got older and beat up anyone who bothered her or made her fun of her. I guess Margie was okay with that. She never said anything to me about it. Now, when they first brought me home from the hospital, Margie and Cleet took turns coming to see their little new brother. I was lying in a crib, and Margie came up to me and said, "Hey, hello, little fella." And even though I do not remember, I have been told this, I smiled a big smile and giggled a big giggle. And Margie and I always had a good relationship, and it started right then and there. When it was Cleet's turn to see his new little brother, he stepped up and started to say hi, but before he could get out a word, I let loose of a projectile stream of vomit that covered his entire face. I think he always held that against me. When I was 18 months old, for example, one day Cleet was outside trying out a new bat Dad had bought him. He was hitting the baseball all over the place, banging it off the other people's apartments and bouncing it off the cars parked on the road. And there were no driveways in Mitchell Court. Finally, he hit a ball that crashed through Mr. Williams's picture window. Cleet ran into the house to tell Dad about it. But when Dad came out, he came straight to me, put me across his knee, and started walloping me my behind. Of course, I cried because I had no idea why I was punished. I didn't find out until years later that Cleet had told Dad that I kept running off with his ball and that I had thrown it through the Williams' window. He had tried to stop me, but you know how stubborn he is, Dad? And he couldn't get the ball out of my hand. Well, Cleet started playing baseball, by the way, in a league when he was 6. But Dad didn't let me play in one until I was 12. He said I didn't have adequate athletic ability, that I needed to watch my brother more closely and learn the ins and outs of the game. And I remember going to Cleet's baseball games and watching him sit on the bench. I asked Dad why Cleet never went into the field when his teammates did. And Dad told me Cleet was a secret weapon that the coach didn't want the other team to know about. I didn't know any better. Now, Cleet was not always bad. When I was 2, he talked Mom into letting me go trick or treating. I had a puppy dog costume that was really, really cute. And Cleet had stolen another costume my size of a crow. Cleet would take me to the houses to trick or treat. And then when we got to the street, he would look to see what the people gave us. If a house he went to was giving away really good stuff, then he would take off my puppy costume and replace it with the crow costume and tell me to go back to the house again. When I returned with the treats, he would tell me that I had the best treats and that he was afraid that someone might steal them because I was so small. So he would take the good treats and put them in his bag. He was just looking out for me. When we got home, he told me he would just keep all the candy so I wouldn't eat too much. Now, the Christmas after that particular Halloween, Mom and Dad went to a Christmas party. It was cold and snowy outside, so they told us to stay in. Margie was old enough to babysit me, and Cleet was there to help. Margie told me it was too cold for me to go outside, but Cleet locked her in the closet and told me to go out. And then when I went out, he came after me so we could play a game. I'm not sure what the game was, but he took my coat and my boots off and tied me to a tree. He told me not to move so I wouldn't get hurt. Now, I don't know who was going to hurt me, but I figured Cleet was looking out for me. I couldn't move, and he must have forgotten I was there. Mom and Dad didn't get home until around midnight, and just before they arrived, Cleet opened the closet so Margie could come out. Mom and Dad asked Margie where I was. She said she didn't know. Cleet said he would go out in the cold and try to find me, which he did. Margie was grounded for not taking care of me, and she was not allowed to go to her friend's Christmas party the next night. Cleet was given an extra Christmas present for rescuing me. Now, when Valentine's Day rolled around, my dad brought home some chocolate ice cream to celebrate. Mom told him he shouldn't have brought home chocolate because the last time Margie had chocolate ice cream, she broke out in hives. Yeah, but it's Cleet's favorite, he responded as he dipped out a large scoop and dropped it in Cleet's bowl. It didn't matter to me what kind we had, but Margie didn't get any. Instead, Mom gave her some macaroni salad. I don't think Dad was trying to be mean to Margie so much as he was trying to please Cleet. And me, well, I ate some of the ice cream anyway. Turns out a couple months later, Mom was pregnant with our little sister. Mom and Dad were talking one night about getting some photos of the new baby. Dad thought it was a good idea, and he opened his wallet to show Mom the photos of the kids he already had. Turns out he only had one photo of Margie when she was 3, even though she was now almost 12, and he had one of me when I was about 9 months old. Mom asked if he had any of Cleet. He had 9 photos of Cleet he carried around, and who, by the way, was 9 years old, one for each year. I walked in when they were looking at the photos, and even though I was not even 2.5 years old yet, I liked looking at photos. I thought the photos of Cleet were pretty nice, and the one of Margie was funny. I asked who the other one was of, and Mom said it was me. Wow, I was a fat guy then, wasn't I? I said. Because of the new baby, Dad decided we needed to move again. This time he bought a house. It was 4 bedrooms, even though it was a little less than 800 square feet in size. We moved in just a few weeks before the baby was born. Mom and Dad had a bedroom. They put Cleet and I in the same room, but it was the largest bedroom in the house. Margie got the 3rd bedroom, and the 4th bedroom was for the baby. Now, the girls' rooms were only about 80 square feet in size, but big enough to put a bed in, and not much else. I recall right after we moved in going to see Margie in her room. She was sitting on her bed crying. I wondered what was wrong, but she told me they were tears of joy because she finally was going to have her own room.